undecided voters got an opportunity to hear both sides of this presidential race last night. And I will be honest, just like I usually am in all of my videos and associated content, this debate was unnecessary. Most of the topics covered in this debate are topics that people already know about, except for a few things that I will cover in this video. I will present facts not presented or mentioned in last night's debate because the ABC moderators of this debate were biased in their perspectives on who they would fact check, which I find unfair. Just a quick heads up, I want to highlight that I am neither a Democrat nor a Republican. This means that you can expect an unbiased perspective in this segment, as well as in any of my other videos, both past and future. Now, moving on to the first question from last night's debate.
Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
Wait a minute.
Provide a $6,000 tax cut so that young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, and buy clothes for their children. I noticed that Trump did not note what his opponent would say during a debate because he could have followed up on her statement by asking her a simple question. Like, in his voice, it would have been, what large number of Americans cannot afford cribs, car seats, and clothes for their children? Since she needed to clarify who precisely she was referring to, let's assume she is referring to families living in poverty. In most cases, multiple nonprofit organizations and even local state government programs that have been around for years give these items to those families for free. So suppose you want to help people experiencing poverty and include all other Americans. In that case, you don't increase the prices of everything they need to live an everyday worry-free life in America, including housing and food at the grocery stores, gas, electricity, water, and even their medical bills, which would include their prescription medications. Oh, and taxes in general shouldn't even exist, especially since the majority of the taxes Americans pay are funding the likes of millions of illegal immigrants and their well-being while squatting in communities in America unwarranted under her watch as the current vice president. Now, let me remind you that the question asked was,
when it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
She completely danced around the question and didn't provide a statement, not even remotely answering it. That's manipulating millions of viewers using psychological methods to make them question their sanity or powers of reasoning. I just gave you the definition of gaslighting, and she did much of that through this debate.
You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
Wait a minute.
But there's how much cap going on right now. There's how much cap. There's how much cap going on right now. There's how much cap.
The ABC moderator should have fact-checked her statements during her response, but they did not, leaving viewers to believe that Trump endorses Project 2025. She even alluded to Trump's plan as being Project 2025 twice, without any moderator fact-checking her and correcting her about this false claim.
If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban.
See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before.
In my previous video called "This is What They Don't Tell You," I exposed that Kamala's campaign administrator admitted to a CNN reporter that they know Trump is not part of Project 2025, but they will say it anyway. I'll leave the link to this video in the bubble above in the top right corner and the description so that you may watch it once this video concludes. Even though this portion was not necessary to debate, it was done with the female ABC moderator's intended purpose of assisting Kamala with displaying her full support for American mothers.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason
Kamala's previous work as the Attorney General of California proves that she doesn't care about American mothers because she locked up California mothers who cannot take their children to school or missed a few days from school, separating the children from their mothers. Unfortunately, Trump did not mention this, but I did in my previous video called "They Thought We Wouldn't Notice It." The ABC moderator tried to fact-check Trump when he said,
Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote.
She made a statement as if it were a fact 100%, but it was actually incorrect to a certain degree. She said,
there is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Again, even though that is true to a certain degree, in its proper context, there are currently 7 states, including the nation's capital, that have no term limits on abortion. This can be easily checked, but this exposes that the moderators are biased in their questioning and fact-checking. For example, the states of Colorado, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and the District of Columbia have no restrictions on any stages of abortion. It's legal up to birth for elective abortions with no gestational restrictions, leaving the decision up to the doctors and the mother and the father. The bottom line is that depending on the situation of the fetus during and after birth in these states that I just mentioned, they will allow a process called perinatal palliative care, which does result in it being legal to, quote, life-limiting, end quote, a baby after it is born, according to a peer-reviewed article written and published by the ACOG.
You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you veto?
could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to...
We have heard Trump mention that the former governor agreed with this, and I've since fact-checked this, and he is correct, because the former Virginia governor, Democrat Ralph Northam, endorsed it in 2019, which is probably why they cut Trump off.
There was a very contentious committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on 3rd trimester abortions, as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion, even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure and explain her answer?
Yeah, and I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you first thing I would say is this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about 3rd trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion.
Similar to legislation signed by former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, it is called the Repeal Act, and it was introduced as HB 2491 by Delegate Kathy Tran, a Democrat of Springfield, Virginia, in 2019. Listen to Kathy Tran's statements as the House subcommittee questioned her about this bill.
This bill would remove the following statutes: trap or targeted regulations of abortion providers, removing language classifying facilities that perform 5 or more first trimester abortions per month as hospitals, It would repeal Virginia's informed consent mandatory ultrasound and 24-hour delay. It would repeal the requirement that second trimester abortions be performed in a hospital licensed by the State Department of Health. It would repeal the requirement for 2 additional physicians in cases of third trimester abortions.
Delegate Tran.
Yes, sir.
How late in a pregnancy would your bill apply if a physician was simply willing to certify that the continuation of the pregnancy would impair the mental health of the woman? How late are we talking about?
Well, so the way the suggestion that we've made in the bill is to say it's in the third trimester and at the, with the certification of the physician. So
how late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
It's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the third trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Now, let me remind you that the question asked was,
but my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
Kamala disregarded this question and inserted a dilemma that allowed her to segue into blaming Trump for the reason they had open borders under Biden's administration, as if an executive order cannot close the borders immediately under her watch as the current vice president. So that was a deflection tactic. And it also included a distraction that would allow Trump to not respond to the question at hand.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Whoever coached her to recite these statements for sound bites perfectly designed it so that Trump would fall right into this trap. If I were judging this debate, this is where I would give Kamala a point because her team's deflection tactic was executed effectively. However, this also means that she is not willing to own up to her mistakes or bad policies that affected America throughout her time in office. The open border policy was on Biden, but it was also on her because Biden assigned this mission to her to create a better immigration process.
What's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
Again, the ABC moderators are fact-checking Trump, but did not fact-check Kamala once during this entire debate. Was Trump wrong for saying what he said? No. So what was he referring to? I'll play a video for you.
I think it's like kind of odd that like a guy like me has to come out from doing what I do on a daily basis to have fun, because I see what's going on in these streets, and I see you guys just sitting up there in them comfy chairs and suits, and I'm getting out here every day and I'm broadcasting this, and you guys are just sitting up there in suits or something. Like I really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They flipping cars in the middle of the street. And I don't know how, like, y'all can be comfortable with this. Like, I don't know, like, who's getting paid from it. I honestly feel like someone's getting paid from it in the background. A bunch of people on a bus getting dropped off at a gas station to come down here. I know a single mom that FaceTimed me this morning at the welfare office that really need something. And it's nothing but immigrants over there. And I don't even want to, seem like I'm coming down on the immigrants, because it's the people that's bringing them down here. Because wherever they're at, that's what they're used to, bro. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them.
I am currently investigating this situation in Ohio to gather more information so that I may present this story to you. I will upload this story in my next video. So hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss it.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother.
Wait a minute.
Let's not forget the question.
I know you say that your values have not changed, so then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
And you guessed it, she danced around the question by not providing a direct answer, gaslighting this entire debate. Now, the rest of the debate is a lot of Trump's rambling and many rehearsed written statements from Kamala. Trump was right in many cases, and Kamala used a few more false claims against Trump that had been debunked by fact checkers in the past. But the ABC moderators purposely missed the opportunity to correct her.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect.
If you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved, and Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
We have been weak under Joe Biden. And so our adversaries around the globe, big and small, know that they can push us. Go ahead, Wesley, you go. You can talk.
I'm gonna give you my favorite President Trump story. This is my #1 favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal. Meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes. Tell him what I said.
Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months not a single American was killed in Afghanistan?
Sure did.
That's the definition of strength. That's what I'm talking about. And so you could imagine that kind of sentiment being around the world. If we have an embassy in another country, no one's going to touch it because they're going to be fearful that they're going to get a Moab on their head. That's how President Trump rolls.
As I've said at the beginning of this video, this debate was unnecessary because we didn't hear any of Kamala's policies. I blame the ABC moderators for not fact-checking both people to keep things fair and for not asking the right questions that Americans have when it comes to choosing the right person to lead this country as president.
I'm just here to make you think.
Slow down.